This is the second of our three-part video series on the risks businesses face during the festivities that take place at this time of year. In our first video, we identified what those risks are, and as part of that, touched on the mandatory duty of employers to take reasonable steps to prevent sexual harassment of their employees at work, what I will call the preventative duty. Carrying out a risk assessment is an important part of complying with that preventative duty, and that is what I'm going to explain in this video. The Equality and Human Rights Commission's technical guidance is clear that employers will be unlikely to meet the preventative duty without carrying out a sexual harassment risk assessment. And it's also one of the 8 steps explicitly required by the EHRC in its Employer 8-Step Guide to Preventing Sexual Harassment at Work. Work social activities may be covered by a risk assessment. It's not necessary to have a separate risk assessment for work social events, though you can if you wish. Also, given the high-risk nature of work social activities, it's worth reviewing your policies and procedures and considering whether any updates are needed ahead of your office festivities. The risk assessment can be carried out by an external party, an independent HR consultancy, for example, or in-house by members of HR and management. However it's done, it would be good to appoint one person from HR or management to project manage the exercise in its entirety. A risk assessment essentially involves thinking about the specific risks in a particular context and then considering what can be done to mitigate those risks. The first step in doing this is looking back at history, so looking at the past and using that information to predict what could happen in the future and putting measures in place to guard against the same risks arising. For example, have there been issues at Christmas parties in your organisation in the past? What were they and how were they addressed? What were the learning points from them that can be put into place now if they haven't already? Identifying the risks to your business will necessarily involve engaging with your employees as the people on the ground. It would be worth speaking to employee representatives from across the organisation and getting their input when putting the risk assessment together. What do they perceive to be the risks, and what are their views on how those risks can be addressed? Health and safety and legal advisors can also be involved. Use the risk assessment to formulate an action plan. Potential risk factors relating to Christmas parties and social events could include the venue. Is the event taking place at an external venue? If so, will there be exposure to third parties, including staff at the venue? Timing. Will the event be taking place out of hours? Out of hours increases the chance of late night travel, which is a risk. Alcohol. Alcohol lowers inhibitions and blurs boundaries, which coupled with a less formal setting can lead to employees acting differently. What about the supply, limited or unlimited, of alcohol? Will there be a free bar? How are those things going to be monitored? Is there pressure on staff to attend and/or consume alcohol if it's on offer? What about the mixing of junior staff and senior staff in an informal setting? It can result in power imbalances. Think about your travel arrangements. If the venue is outside the office, will the business provide travel to the venue? If not, how are staff expected to get to and from? Consider arrangements after the event. For example, what's the likelihood of people sharing taxis or continuing the socialising at an after-party? Also think about things like the making of unacceptable comments of a sexual nature in the form of banter or joking in an informal setting. Also consider whether there is anything else that's specific to your business, setting or party. All of these risks and any others relevant to your business and the event in question need to be identified, and measures to deal with them need to be considered. And that, in a nutshell, is the basics of carrying out a risk assessment. Our next video will explain what practical steps businesses may take to mitigate the risks associated with activities that take place in the festive season. Thank you for watching.